welcome to another edition of the Luke Dawkins 01 YouTube channel where we talk about a lot of superhero stuff. Really fun superhero stuff, and a couple videos ago we made a tier list, and I kind of tier listed all the Marvel movies that have came out as of recent, all the MCU movies, and I really like doing that. I actually think that was really fun. So today we're going to do another tier list, but what's going to be different is today we are doing nothing but Spider People. We're going to be tier listing all of the Spider People. And that's not just Spider-Man. It's going to include some other different variations, other different versions, so to speak. Just Spider People as a broad category. Now, obviously, there's a lot of them. So we can't really cover all of them because we'd be here for a really, really long time. But we are going to cover a couple. And if you see, when you look at this screen, you will notice that up here at the top, there's an S+. And down here at the bottom, there's an F. After I am done ranking all of the characters, either from S tier to D tier, I'll at the end determine S+ is my absolute favorite. F is my absolute, oh my god, never, delete this character. Get rid of them. I don't want to see them grace the light of day ever again. So, first up on our tier list is going to be Black Suit Spider-Man. Now, obviously, there's a bunch of different iterations of Black Suit Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire's even had his own. I'm just doing Black Suit Spider-Man as a blanket statement across the board. So, there's two things we know about Black Suit Spider-Man. Number one, it is always going to be a predecessor to eventual Venom. Number two, that we know about Black Suit Spider-Man, he looks awesome. Those are the two things that we know about Black Suit Spider-Man. He's going to look cool, and also we're going to gradually watch the awesome, fun-loving Peter Parker slowly delve into basic madness to a certain extent, obviously leading to his eventual rejection of the Venom symbiote and the creation of Venom, as we all know and love. There's so much to this character. Besides just a visual look, it's also an internal battle of Peter as he basically chooses the power to really kind of make the kind of difference that he's always wanted to make versus what that power is doing to him on the inside. Literally. Spider-Man finally has the ability to really go out there and handle business the way he probably always wishes that he could, but now it's eating him alive. It's turning him into something he doesn't want to be, and we have to watch Spider-Man choose morality over power. That inerrant storyline, mixed with the fact that he just looks awesome, we're going to be starting off this filter with an easy S tier for Black Suit Spider-Man. We now move on to Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I'm aware that some people don't exactly love his iteration. Some people say that he's more of an Iron Man Jr., he's coddled, everything's been done for him, and to an extent, you're right. I think until the last two movies. I think in the first Spider-Man movie, and even Avengers Infinity War, and maybe even a little bit of Avengers Endgame, he was a little coddled to a certain extent. He was, Iron Man Jr. It felt like Tony kind of did everything for him. But in the second movie, obviously Tony Stark has passed away. We have to watch him defeat Mysterio by himself, literally struggle with his past in that movie. And obviously in the third Spider-Man movie that we saw from him, he lost his Aunt May, and everyone has forgotten who he is. No one knows the name Peter Parker. No one knows who Spider-Man is at this moment. So he's literally diving into the aspect of Spider-Man that we've kind of always known him as, which is a kind of a tragic story. Because here's the thing about Spider-Man. It's pretty much a rule at Marvel. He can't really ever be happy. He can be happy for a little while to set up an eventual depressing as crap storyline, but he can't really be happy permanently. Because for some reason the Marvel writers hate him. I don't know what the deal is. But we are watching Tom Holland Spider-Man, and probably the next 1, 2, 3 movies, however more he's going to do, we're going to watch him really become his own Spidey. And really become the Spider-Man that so many people are wanting him to be. And I think that's going to happen. I think as of right now, we could confidently slide him into B tier. He's a good Spider-Man, but he hasn't done anything on his own to really cement himself into that Spider-Man legacy. But B tier works for the moment, I believe. Could be an A tier, maybe even an S tier in the future. Next up, we have Man Spider. Obviously, Man Spider is a mutated version of Spider-Man where it more so embraces the spider aspects instead of the human aspects. Whole bunch of different iterations out there. A whole bunch of different TV shows have kind of dived into this. Story comic lines. Pretty much it's kind of a one-sided gimmick. You know, Spider-Man becomes mutated. Now he's more spider than man, and he's a monster. I mean, it's cool in theory. I don't really feel like there's much to it besides he's a monster. So, because of that, even though it does look cool, I'm going to go C tier for Man Spider. Next up, we have Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099. Obviously, there is a comic book counterpart as well. I'm just kind of doing across the board here with Spider-Man 2099, more so focusing on the Spider-Verse series because obviously that's the most recent version of Spider-Man 2099 that we have received in mainstream media. Miguel O'Hara is a cool character. He's so cool. He has awesome tech. He has, sometimes he feels more beast than man. He's a really cool, really interesting character, especially in the Spider-Man, especially in the Spider-Verse series. Obviously, he's almost kind of like an antagonist at this point, actively hunting down the Spider-Verse Miles Morales, trying to basically make sure that his dad dies, which is kind of crazy, but I guess that's Miguel O'Hara for you. He was very well done in this movie. Very serious tone, big, intimidating, hulking dude. I think they did him very, very well. I think obviously we'll need to see a little bit more of that as these movies continue to progress. But also, if you want to look at the comic counterpart of Spider-Man 2099, he has cemented himself into a little bit of a, maybe not quite legacy, but people know who he is. And he has a good fan base as well. So we're going to pop Spider-Man 2099 into the A tier position. Next up, we move on to one of the Spider-Man clones, and that's going to be Ben Reilly. Really, when it comes to the Spider-Man clones, it can be a little mucky sometimes in terms of sometimes they can be well written and sometimes they're just not well written. Sometimes the storyline can be interesting and sometimes the storyline might just be super weird. And obviously, we did get a Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider variant in the Spider-Verse series. He was played by Andy Samberg. He was played by Andy Samberg, and he had a very, serious / comedic tone where he narrated everything. Obviously, that's not quite similar to what he is in the comics. So let's look at how he looks physically. Obviously, he's going to be a Spider-Man physique, but if we look at his suit, it's cool. Some people have a problem with it, others don't. I think it's cool. I like the eyes. I like the lack of layered texture. Sometimes that can be really cool. The hoodie is cool. It can kind of throw some people off, which I fully understand. So because of that, I'm going to slide Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider into the B tier position. Next up, we have Spider-Man Unlimited. I'm not going to lie. When I ran across this show when I was a young kid, it depressed the crap out of me. This was a dark, sometimes slow, sometimes even painful to watch kind of a show. The design of him is really interesting, how it's more of it almost feels more like a silhouette than a suit at times. Obviously, the webbing cape's really cool, but as great of a design as it was, I feel like the show just kind of let it down a little bit to the fact that I never really feel like I could have connected with the Unlimited Spider-Man. So because of that, he will be joining our dear Man Spider into the C tier position. Next up, we have PS5 Spider-Man. Everyone loved the first PS5 Spider-Man. For some reason, people hate on the second one. I understand the complaints. However, I still loved it. I thought it was a great game. I think they did multiple elements well. I loved Kraven. I love Venom. I love PS5 Spider-Man suit. I love that they gave him a tremendous backstory. I love that we've seen character development out of him. I love that in the first game we literally had to see him choose between Aunt May, the staple of his life, the person who's always been there for him since day one, or pretty much the fate of humanity to a certain extent. Um, Dude, that was heavy. It takes a lot for a video game to make someone cry. Dude, that moment had tears in my eyes. That was a legitimately good moment. Seeing him fight Doc Ock, seeing him team up with Miles at the end of Spider-Man 2 to fight Venom, see him with that interaction with Harry. Dude, this is such a great Spider-Man. Now, obviously, we've only gotten 2 storylines, so to speak, of him. I'm so excited for Spider-Man 3 to come out on the PS5. And because of how awesome he is, even though he hasn't been around for too long, I'm going to give Spider-Man PS5 the S tier position. We now move on to Spider-Man the Animated Series, one of perhaps the most classic Spider-Man of all time. It was a really, really good series. It was well-paced, as most of those early animated series are, much like the X-Men series. Just very well-paced, very well done, and I think it's so funny. When you look, if you ever really pay attention to that, it's hilarious that Spider-Man never actually punches someone. That's like a weird known fact. You can watch that entire series. He doesn't punch anybody, which is weird. He'll throw stuff at them. He'll throw them. He'll web them in the face. But at no point do you see him punch someone, which is just very interesting. My biggest gripe with this Spider-Man, even though I do love him, is his Peter Parker didn't really feel like a Peter Parker to me. Like, yeah, he was smart, but he wasn't nerdy. And also, he was kind of stout. Like, dude, he was a big dude, man. And that just, aesthetically with the Peter Parker, that kind of threw me off sometimes. He sometimes seemed very angry and very short-tempered. I do think the quips that they had in this show were pretty good for the time. He did do a good bit of talking during fights. He is iconic, but I definitely think he could be improved upon. I'm going A tier for Spider-Man the Animated Series. We now move to Spider-Man Noir, who's obviously had his own comic line for quite some time now, was made very popular by Nicolas Cage voice acting him in the Spider-Verse series. In the comics, very dark, very gritty, at times very gruesome. Obviously, the Spider-Verse delved into the more comedic side of it. Having Nicolas Cage voice him and just some of the "wherever I go, the wind follows," that was just a great depiction of that character. A great twist on that character, so to speak. And I think because of what Nick Cage did for him in the Spider-Verse series, it kind of threw him more into a little bit of a spotlight. I even think he's getting his own TV show, if I'm not mistaken. I think I've heard that. I'm not sure if that's been confirmed or not. But yeah, I think he's getting his own TV show. At the moment, he still feels like a background character instead of a foreground character. I think he could move up this list, but for right now, I'm going to go C tier for Spider-Man Noir. Next up, we have Peter B. Parker from the Spider-Verse series. Peter Parker in every way, but if his life kind of fell apart on him, as it often happens for Peter Parkers, and if he kind of got super lazy and got not necessarily fat, because he can still move, he was Spider-Man, but he got a little chubby for a Spider-Man. This Peter B. Parker was played by Jake Johnson. If you don't know his name, he's the guy from New Girl. He's kind of Jess's love interest. I feel like this was a good introduction to this character. He was a great mentor, even though sometimes very reluctant mentor to Miles Morales. At times he could take on the leadership position. In the second movie, he even began to side with Miles Morales over basically that entire spider community. It's funny. He's just a great guy. Especially now that he's fixed his relationship with MJ. He has his kid, May Parker. He's genuinely just a great, lovable character. Is he one of the greatest Spider-Men of all time? No, I don't think you can confidently say that. But among Spider-Man fans, the name Peter B. Parker does have some weight to it. I'm going to be putting Peter B. Parker into the B tier position. Perhaps with another movie or two, especially given what we've seen out of his character, he could probably move into the A tier position very, very easily. Next up, we have the Iron Spider. And of course, this is just, there's no difference between him and normal Peter Parker. It's just him in the suit. So with that in mind, I'm going to rank this character more on the design aspect. This was also used in the original Civil War comic line. And it's a cool suit. It's become iconic. Is it one of his best looking suits of all time? I don't think so. Is it sleek and cool? Yeah. I don't think there's anything inherently above special about it, like we have with the black suit Spider-Man, but there's no denying that Iron Spider looks great. Iron Spider did not look great in Avengers Infinity War and beyond. That iteration of Iron Spider was not that cool at all. I would have actually preferred they would have done something more along the lines of this Iron Spider. All in all, it is a very cool suit, although it could be a little bit better in my opinion. I'm going B tier. Next up, we have the Spectacular Spider-Man and TV show Spider-Man. I'm not going to lie, this was one of the very few Spider-Man related media outlets or, media that I haven't watched. I've seen clips of it and it looks very well put together. I know that it is a show that is well loved among the Spider-Man community. I know there's a lot of people that wish the show would come back. So I'm more so going off of my understanding of how the Spider-Man community as a whole feels about the Spectacular Spider-Man TV show. And it's pretty well received that everyone just pretty much loves it and wants it back. So even though I haven't seen it, I do feel like this could easily go into an A tier position. Some people may argue it's an S, but as someone who hasn't seen it, I can't confidently put it up there at the moment. We now move on to Eddie Brock, Topher Grace Venom. I did include this as a spider person just because, of course, he does have the Spider-Man emblem on his chest, or at least a spider emblem on his chest, and he's a Spider-Man villain. He's dark Spider-Man, so to speak. This is easily the worst interpretation of Venom as far as concept and design I think I've ever seen. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with Topher. I mean, he didn't scream Eddie Brock to me. He more so screamed angry Topher Grace. But, I mean, whatever, It was the 2000s, man, So, like I said, as far as design, this is bad. This is bad. And as whatever pep talk I can give myself about this version of Venom, it just won't work. We're putting this version of Venom into the D tier position. We now move to the other Spider-Man clone, another one, maybe not the only, but another Spider-Man to hold that Scarlet Spider role other than Ben Reilly's Spider-Man. That is going to be Kaine. I've noticed with myself that I tend to like the more angsty versions of characters. Like, you have Goku and Vegeta. I tend to like Vegeta more. You have Naruto and Sasuke. I tend to like Sasuke more. You have Sonic and Shadow. I tend to like Sonic more. Ben Reilly and Kaine, I tend to like Kaine more. I like the attitude. I like the seriousness. I also like his unique power set. The fact that he can have those like claws pop out, and they're really powerful actually, to the point that he actually defeated Wolverine fairly easily by kind of just getting him in the heart in one comic line. And also, his suit is fantastic. This is easily one of the coolest Spider-Man suits I've ever seen. We do like Ben Reilly's. Some people have feelings about the little hoodie thing that he has on. I think for the most part, everyone has agreed upon the consensus that Kaine's Spider-Man costume is so cool. It's sleek, it's simple, it's intimidating, and it works. It fits Kaine's character as a whole perfectly. It perfectly relays his personality and kind of how he tackles life. He is the Vegeta to Peter Parker's Goku, so to speak. And because of that, because of how cool of a character he is, and also just how outstanding that suit is, I am going to give him an A tier position. I'm being a little stingy with the S tier, but I think we'll see some more pop up very soon. The next one we have is the 616 Spider-Man. The OG Spider-Man, so to speak. The Spider-Man that started it all. Obviously, there's not enough amazing things to say about this. This is the Spider-Man that's been around for the longest. He's had the most storylines. He's had the most character development. He's the Spider-Man that inspired all the rest of them. We would have never had a single Spider-Man movie without 616 Spider-Man, and his storyline continues to this very day. One of the most iconic superhero characters of all time. The single most popular superhero character ever. You could say that the trinity of superheroes is Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man as perhaps the front runner of that trio. Because of the simple fact that he's just legendary, we now give 616 Peter Parker an easy S tier. We now move on to Peni Parker. A lot of people were introduced to Peni Parker in the Spider-Verse movie, where she had a decent little back role. It seemed like her character was more of a shock comedy. Like, oh my gosh, there's an anime Spider-Man here? I think that's how a lot of people kind of perceived it. Her suit did get destroyed in that first movie. And also, we've seen her a lot more recently, as depicted in this picture that I have of her here, in Marvel Rivals. In Marvel Rivals, she's a tank. She's really good at holding a point. She's not too great for offense, but she is. If you're holding a point and you're defending something with her, melee characters, good luck. You're getting blown to bits by her little spider bombs. I think she has become a more well-received character because of Spider-Verse and Marvel Rivals. I do think it's going to take a little bit more pushing of her character before we really see her come into the public eye as a really established character. So, for the moment, we're going to give Peni Parker a C tier. Next up, we have Spider-Ham. Again, kind of served as a Peni Parker as more of a comedic role in that movie than anything else. I will say, he had Toon Force, which kind of was insane in that movie. Truthfully, if you want to think about it, he's probably one of the more powerful characters in that movie. That's definitely the most popular version of his character. Obviously, there's been Spider-Ham comics for a decent amount of time now, but same as Peni Parker, same as Spider-Man Noir, that's how people were really introduced to his character. It's tough for me to think really where to place him. I don't think he should go in the B tier. I'm not sure he should go in C tier either, but that is where I'm going to place him. Simply because if we're putting Peter B. Parker in B tier, Spider-Ham's not quite as iconic in him, so we will put him in the C tier position. Next up, we have Superior Spider-Man. If you don't know who Superior Spider-Man is, there was a comic line where Doc Ock, Otto Octavius, basically switched bodies with Peter Parker. Of course, Peter Parker did not desire for this to happen. It was something that was more or less against his will. A lot of people love that comic line. A lot of people love the design of Superior Spider-Man's suit. They want that as a skin in every single Spider-Man related video game out there. People really like him. I'm not going to lie, for me it was hard to get past the fact that he basically forced Peter Parker to switch bodies with him, and then Peter Parker would actually eventually die as Doc Ock. He would come back later and reclaim the body, of course. But that did kind of leave a sour taste in my mouth. Although I have to admit, it's a very interesting take on the character, and it did allow us to explore things about the Spider-Man comic line that perhaps we wouldn't have been able to unless something like this happened. So as much as I hate how they did Peter Parker in this storyline, I do think we give it a B tier, bare minimum, just for being as iconic as it is. A lot of people would probably go A, maybe even S tier. But like I said, sour taste in my mouth, I'm going B tier. Next up, we have Miles Morales from the PS5 series. Of all the iterations of Miles Morales, I think this might be one of my least favorites. I don't know. His character kind of seems a little flat to me in terms of personality. I'm not really sure the developers know what to do with the character sometimes. I think they want him to be, the next upcoming Spider-Man, but in terms of his straight up personality, I don't know how much they've really developed it. It's a great suit. The Miles Morales PS5 game was great as well. I just don't know how much I love that version of Miles at the moment. By the way, the suit they gave him at the end of Spider-Man 2 was horrendous. And I'm, of course, talking about PS5 Spider-Man here. Whatever the heck that was terrible. I think they need to do more character development with him. I'm going to pop PS5 Miles into the C tier position. Next up, we have Venom from the PS5. This is perhaps my favorite iteration of Venom in terms of character design ever. We got the iconic storyline of him merging first with Peter, eventually being rejected. This was a little bit different. He bonded with Harry instead of Eddie, because Harry, of course, was dealing with some things, health-related things, and Venom was there to be able to treat it more or less, and we got to see Venom perhaps be one of the most intimidating Venoms we've ever seen. Within, it felt like moments, the game was overrun with symbiotes everywhere, and that final boss fight, when you team up with Miles and you're fighting Venom, it's great. I know people have their problems with this game. It's fantastic. I truly have nothing bad to say about it. I think this is such a great version of Venom, and I wish he was more than a one-and-done character. But as much as they did for him, I'm going to go A tier. A tier. If we had more content of him, I'd probably put him in S tier. But he was so great, I'm putting him in A tier. Next up, we have Spider-Gwen. Yet another character that was made much more popular by the Spider-Verse series. Of course, they made her much more of a main character than probably any of the other characters, maybe even more than Peter B. Parker. They made her Miles Morales' obvious love interest. They're probably going to get together in the next movie if I had to guess, especially if Shameik Moore has anything to say about it. Of course, voiced by Haley Steinfeld, who is my quarterback's fiance. Go Bills, even though we just lost. I don't want to talk about it. Great character, has her own comic storyline, had it for a decent amount of time. Obviously, Gwen Stacy as well, so there's that aspect to it. I'm going to put Spider-Gwen into the same category as Peter B. Parker, and then it's going to be the B tier. We now move on to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. So, it's interesting, because The Amazing Spider-Man 1 was better than The Amazing Spider-Man 2 by a good amount, in my opinion. The Spider-Man 2 suit was better than the Spider-Man 1 suit by a landslide and a half. I think, in terms of Spider-Man, in terms of the actual put on the suit being Spider-Man, Andrew might have been the best. I don't think he was the best Peter Parker. I truly don't believe that. I think he was a cool guy that I'd probably hang out with. And that doesn't scream nerdy science Peter Parker loner outcast loser to me. He's well loved. People love this Spider-Man. They love Andrew Spider-Man. They freaked out when he jumped through that portal in Spider-Man No Way Home. I freaked out. I screamed. He's a great Spider-Man. I feel like because of how poorly the second movie was received and the fact that he doesn't have a third one yet, but fingers crossed, hopefully he will, I do think he misses out on that S tier category, but I am going to give him an A tier category. I'm placing him just a slot above Tom Holland's Spider-Man because he was his own Spider-Man. You know, Tom Holland, for much of his movies, he had a helper, he had a guy in the chair, he had a Tony Stark. He kind of had a team at all points, and Andrew was just straight out the gate Spider-Man being Spider-Man. We next move on to Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. I'm going to go ahead and preface this. I'm going to be biased with him. This is the Spider-Man that I grew up on. This was the Spider-Man that introduced me to superheroes as a young man. I think he has the best Peter Parker. He's a lone loser. He lives in a crappy apartment. He is Spider-Man. He's Spider-Man. He's a great Peter Parker. He's a good Spider-Man. Like I said, I do think Andrew was a better Spider-Man in terms of, just some of the web swinging scenes we've seen from him, things like that. Tobey easily had the best movies, probably. Especially if you count No Way Home as a Tobey movie. And, of course, the same thing would go for Andrew because they're also in it. Spider-Man 1 and 2 are iconic, fantastic. Even Spider-Man 3, if you go back and watch it now, it's much more well-received now than I think it was back then. It's not as bad as you think it is if you go back and rewatch it. Like I said, I'm going to be biased. Hopefully you agree with me. I'm going Tobey Maguire as an S tier. Next up is the Ultimate Spider-Man from the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show. This is a Spider-Man that was voiced by Drake Bell. I feel like Drake Bell did fine with this character. You know, I think the cutaways and the talking to the camera and the quips were all great part of the show. Them making him into a young Avenger, so to speak, was interesting. You know, it was... sometimes it worked. I feel like sometimes it didn't. There were a lot of great cameos in this show. There were some decent storylines as well. Overall, this show wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. I do think Drake Bell playing Spider-Man was probably the best part of this show. I'm going to give the Ultimate Spider-Man a B tier. Just because, like I said, I do like what Drake Bell was able to do with the character, and I do like how they went about Spider-Man himself. It was just the other aspects of the show that I just didn't quite enjoy as much. But everything around Spider-Man, cool. Okay. Good. Not great, but I wouldn't call it bad by any measure. Next up, we have Venom. 616 Venom. And much like original 616 Spider-Man, this is iconic. He is one of the most iconic comic book characters of all time. It's very hard to think about Spider-Man without thinking about Venom. They're kind of hand in hand at this point. Venom, you know, a Spider-Man villain, but also an anti-hero, lethal protector, especially in the newer runs where he defeated Null, the God of Light Venom. Venom's awesome. Dude, I mean, oftentimes the comic book iterations of superheroes are going to far surpass any other iterations. And the same thing is true of 616 Venom. I do think in terms of design, PS5 Venom probably will be the best we'll see for quite some time. But, I mean, you can't disregard how iconic Venom is, so he's going to go into the S tier category very easily. Next up, we have Madam Web. I just kind of grouped all of them together. So when I grade Madam Web, I'm not just grading her, I'm grading every single Spider person in that movie. Every single Spider person. Yeah, that's I don't have to explain that one. I think we all kind of agree on that. If this was a comedic tier listing on how much the movie makes you laugh, S tier. But in terms of being good, no. No. And then last but not least, we have Miles Morales from the Spider-Verse series. Of course, voiced by Shameik Moore, who is currently losing his mind on social media right now. But I would say this, even with PS5 Miles Morales, this is the more well-known version. This is what made his character, who was already an established character. Comic book Miles Morales was very established. But this jumped him further into quote-unquote stardom. I do think he is a fairly well-known Spider-Man character at this point. Of course, no matter what way you cut it, he's not going to be as good as Peter. Peter's the original. I just don't think he's ever, no matter what he does, even though he is an iconic character, even though he is an established character, even though he is well received by many, I don't think he'll ever touch the legacy that Peter Parker Spider-Man has built, because everyone knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Peter Parker is synonymous with Spider-Man. You think Miles Morales, and you think Miles Morales. He's a good Spider-Man, but he's not the Spider-Man. But like I said, very iconic, especially this Spider-Verse version. We are going A tier with this version. So, now that we have officially ranked all of the Spider people, I'm now going to choose my favorite to put into S+, and I'm going to choose my least favorites to put into F. I think if you were to pause this video right now and be like, oh, I think he's going to choose this, and I think he's going to choose this, there's a decent chance you could be correct. I'll actually give you a second to pause the video real quick. Okay, cool. Let's see if you were right. So, for me, S+, I don't think you can argue against this one. I do think, truthfully, there could even be a category above S and in between S+, where a lot of these characters here could confidently slide into. But I feel like there's no question as to who of these characters deserves S+, and that is going to be the Spider-Man that started this all, Spidey 616, the OG, the original, the Spider-Man that without him there wouldn't be anything else. The Spider-Man that Stan Lee himself crafted with his own beautiful two hands, R.I.P. And this should come as no surprise either. I'm sure many of you got that correct if you actually paused the video and took time to guess. But yeah, obviously there could be a lot more spider people in this list that I could rank. There's so many. There's a Spider-Verse out there. But I chose some of the more iconic, well-known, and obvious ones. So this is my tier list. Y'all comment down below. Let me know if you would change anything. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time.